Hello, welcome to the Field Report. I'm Alex Allen and I'm joined by CJ Goder and Kieran Quick. In this episode, we're going to be talking about Fanshawe's recent Apex tournament and break down some of the highlights there. We got R6 still running on that hot streak and they got 5 wins and 0 losses right now. And our guest that's going to be coming on the show, he's one of the field casters, Justin Reed, or you might know him as Reider. He'll be coming on to talk about his experience commentating and a bit about the behind the scenes that we do here for Field. But also, let's not forget about those top 10 plays there. CJ, how's it looking?
They're looking pretty good, and I think the viewers are going to be pretty surprised at some of the clips we see and some of the teams we don't see this week in the top 10s.
Yeah, no, I definitely know that I was shocked about the top 10 plays, so I'm excited for everybody else to see them.
I mean, I'm sitting here excited myself. But you know what? Let's move right into the hot streaks. Fanshawe Field, the Rainbow Six Siege team, faced Arcadia Knights this week in NECC action. Even though Field walked away with the 2-0 win of that best-of-3 matchup, the Knights gave them actually a really good battle. Both rounds of the maps went into overtime, but Fanshawe still walked away 8-6 on both maps. What do you think about that, Kieran?
Yeah, you know, we've had a closely contested rivalry throughout our whole R6 career with Arcadia, and they were definitely our toughest challenge yet this semester, but the boys really handled themselves well. You know, they didn't have their full roster. They were running with a sub once again, and they managed to keep their flawless map record, their flawless record, and yeah, it was a really tightly contested game, but let's quickly take a look at some of those numbers for our team. I think we're going to start off here with Kenny, the all-star sub, coming in with a 1.19 KD. You know, you can't really ask more out of a sub player. Like, if I had a sub play like this, I'd be over the moon. What do you guys think?
Yeah, you know what? Like, the big thing for me is, like, we know this. We don't have all the stats up to display to you guys today, but Kenny, the super sub, he's putting up better numbers than team captain Perza and team regular on the one team May kit. So when you look at on almost 1.20 in 4 games, like, that's a tremendous, not only just consistency, that's not just filling a role, that's excelling in that role with the rest of the team. And that's just too impressive if you ask me.
Oh, absolutely. And you know what? From him coming as a sub role, like, you're kind of expecting that he has a little bit of fire under himself to prove a point, to say, like, hey, next semester, like, I actually want to be on the main line here.
Yeah, you know, fire only takes you so far, though. I think this kid really just has some raw talent that he's kind of tapping into. He has the hype factor. We'll see a little bit of that later, but he's got the hype factor. And he has a really good shot, but gonna kick it over to another one of our players here. But yeah, no, Brendo. He's been our go-to guy. A 1.7 on the season so far. That's he almost has 92 kills in 5 games is pretty crazy. I don't know about you guys, but I could definitely never do that in Siege.
Yeah, no, I absolutely could not myself. And the big thing for me is, you know, let's make the Call of Duty comparison. When I think of Brendo, I often think of Bonk as well. You know what I mean? When you're thinking a staple of a team, a staple of consistency, and not just an average consistency, but bringing that all-star level play to the field game after game. And that's sort of what Brendo's been. But the most impressive thing about it is he's finding success not just alone, but with his other team as well. And that's why they find themselves in the hot streak as well. It's not like one guy's going on a burner, leaving the rest of the squad behind. Brendo's making sure everybody is finding success at a high level together.
I just absolutely love seeing Brendo play out there too. He makes unique plays, and he just kind of sometimes wanders off on himself on each sort of map, and it's like, what is he doing out there? And then all of a sudden he just comes and flanks the other team in such a perfect way and is able just to eliminate 2 off so fast. And I just love seeing him, what he can actually accomplish.
Yeah, Brendo's in-game IQ is just off the charts, and you know, he has so much knowledge of Rainbow Six, and you know, he's so good at comms too. You know, even when he dies, he's still such an asset for the team. But I think right now the Fanshawe Fuel's main asset is Masonlit. I'm pretty sure we have his stats to show you as well. A 2.17, 5 games played, 10 maps total. 126 kills and 58 deaths. That is an insane stat line. I don't think, like, if I can't match Brendo's stats, no way can I match Mason's. So
Yeah, you know what? I love how we buried the lead on this one. You know what I mean? We talked about the super sub. We talked about the all-star and Brendo and the consistency we get to see. And then you got Mason Lit, who's just gone on an absolute tear so far this season. And you're so right, Night Flash, like 2.17. We talk about Brendo being an all-star, then my goodness, Mason must be playing at superstar levels so far this season, because 126 kills to 58 deaths through 5 games, that's an absolute burner.
I mean, it's huge. Like, I think almost every map he's gotten double-digit kills, like, so far, which still blows my mind. And you know what? Even when the cameras do transition over to the teams and like the streams, you can just see like the other players, they're cheering along, but he is just still so drilled in making sure what's going to be happening next in that next round.
So I just did some quick math here. 5 games played, that equals 10 maps. Fuel haven't dropped the map yet. Mason is averaging 12.6 kills a map.
Wow.
That is insane. I'm not sure about the deaths. If I had to guess, I'd say it's about 10 game. It's about 2. No, sorry, it's about 5. I think it's 5.2 actually, but that's just a crazy stat line for him.
No, absolutely. And if we could just take a look at the overall stats of the team again here in a moment, because the one thing I want to highlight is we saw the KDs, we saw the burners these guys were on, but the round difference, you know what I mean? He kind of highlighted the average Mason was providing on a regular basis, but a 43 round difference in a 10 map advantage, not dropping a single map like you mentioned there, Night Flash. Like, that's not winning comfortably, that's dominating. You know what I mean?
It is.
Yeah, I completely agree. Like I said, this past week was the only really closely contested match, and the Fuel still managed to squeak through. So I think this team is really looking good, and I'm excited to see the future of this season and the future of this squad.
Yeah, and I mean, kind of thinking about back of that round difference for Field, they're sitting at 43, and the closest other team right now for the Arcadia is the Arcadia Knights, and they're sitting at 22 of their round difference. Like, Field is double that already in the standings. That's just nuts.
Well, we've talked about them a good bit in Hot Streak, so I guess everybody will find out next week if this hot burner they've been on is going to continue, because we'll be talking about them right here again if it does.
Yeah, let's see how it goes. But you know what? Let's move into Call of Duty, R6, and Valorant are just a few games that Reider commentates on for Fuel. Reider has actually been commentating for Fuel for a good while, and he's actually been doing some production virtually too when we were starting things around for that. But with the amount of games Reider commentates on, he's now coming out to invade our podcast too here. Let's move on to seeing Reider. How you doing here today?
Oh, I'm doing great. It's a pleasure to be on. I saw your guys' first episode last week, and I was really happy to hear you guys wanted me on for the second episode. I'm certainly excited.
I mean, speaking about commentating, how long have you actually been commenting for Fuel?
Fanshawe was my first ever casting gig. It's how I got into it, right? So I think it's got to be over a year and a half at this point that I've been commentating, and it's really been a journey.
And you know what? Is there other like games out there that you kind of commentate for Fuel too, other than Call of Duty R6 or Val?
Yeah, so I commentate Rocket League. I've commentated Smash before. Um, Off the top of my head, I mean, I can probably name the ones I haven't. I don't think I've ever done Overwatch, and I don't think I've ever done FIFA. And other than that, I think I've done pretty much every esport Fanshawe has streamed, other than those few.
No interest in ever giving that Overwatch a go, or is it just the opportunities never presented itself?
I think the opportunities never really presented itself, although they did need a caster. I do so many esports that I can't do them all. But it's a fast-paced game, Overwatch, right? So I like to consider myself as a play-by-play commentator. So I think I would. If I learned the game, which I haven't, I don't know the first thing about Overwatch, but I feel like I would be a good fit in that esport. But I don't think that's gonna happen anytime soon. It seems as if Wishy and Night Flash over there has got a lock on that.
Well, we talked about Overwatch, and we talked about all, you've got a variety of games, you have casted. For you as a play-by-play guy, like, what's the toughest game for you to keep up with and make sure you're getting the viewer the best experience?
Oh, I think the toughest one is also the one I'm most familiar with. It's got to be Call of Duty. Everything happens so fast, and in Modern Warfare 2, it's not so difficult. The movement's a lot slower, so the game pace is a lot slower. There's still a map like Fortress that's just almost impossible to cast correctly. The hard point on Fort is really tough. But if you go back to like Vanguard, man, was that just a nightmare right off the bat. That game came out, and there was a map called Bocage, if you remember, and I mean, there was not a moment where two gunfights weren't happening at the same time, and hardpoints could flip up to 20 times per hardpoint. So it sometimes became really tough to cast that, and so that's why, I mean, Call of Duty's got to be the toughest cast.
So we touched on, obviously you don't know a thing about Overwatch, so you don't play Overwatch. But what is your favorite game to play, like, at this moment? Obviously, we're all gamers here, so what have you been grinding the most as of late?
Well, as of late, I have been grinding Tarkov, Escape from Tarkov. It's a really good change of pace for me. I've been really into Valorant, and then once Call of Duty Ranked came out, I was into Call of Duty Ranked. And then, I mean, switching to Tarkov, there's a huge learning curve, and it's not like an esport, but it's just it's a lot more relaxing, even though it's one of the most stressful games out there, compared to playing a game competitively, which you can get so frustrated at very quickly if you don't have success. Tarkov, you get frustrated for different reasons. So it's a good change of pace, but I think I'm going to stick to Tarkov for a little bit longer before I eventually switch off to something else.
Sounds good.
Justin, you kind of first joined for Fanshawe, you first joined the journalism broadcasting program, but then you transferred over to graphic design. What was your reason for that?
Yeah, I enjoyed broadcast journalism, and I had to switch over though because I found that program had a lot more to do with journalism than it did with broadcasting. I was really there for the broadcasting, and I kind of went there with the intentions of being a sports broadcaster of some sort. And during my first semester is actually when I became an esports broadcaster for the Fanshawe field the first time. And I realized that I was getting a lot more experience doing broadcasting with the Fanshawe Fuel than I was in the broadcast journalism program. So I decided, okay, I want to work in the esports industry. I like what I'm doing here. So why don't I go get a degree in design and website design and stuff like that. So maybe I can work in the esports industry, if not casting, then in something else. But ideally, I think the goal is to do casting full time, but that's a long way away.
Yeah, the big thing for me, though, is like you got that broadcast experience through the Fuel. You got that education and knowledge through journalism, and now you're doing some more graphic design-based stuff. Like when you look at all that information you're intaking, like that's basically an esports caster production team wrapped up and bundled in one with a sprinkle of content creation. I know you decided to make the switch, but just, doing all these different things along the way, sort of building this structure to who is Reider. How is being this diverse sort of benefited your growth?
Well, and it's not only within esports that I've got a diverse skill set. I'm also a ski instructor. I play the bagpipes. I do all kinds of things. I really like to try new things. I like to do if something interests me, I want to hop into it. So it wasn't really tough for me to break out into different like esport branches with that previous experience and just trying new things and stuff like that. I like to think I learn quickly. So sometimes juggling, all these different things all at once, I got to sacrifice one for the other. But other than that, I mean, I manage it pretty well.
Yeah, and ultimately, I got to ask, we're all just at our ages. We're at so many forks in the road come in front of us. You know what I mean? So many different opportunities, options, places we can go, things we can do. For you, now that you're progressing through this program here now, what's sort of the end goal for you? Where would you like to see yourself ending up? Like, where do you want to find yourself?
Yeah, that's a crazy question because I'm like 21 now, and I go around, I tell people I'm an old man. Just a few years ago, I wasn't even in my 20s, and I was kind of scared to enter my 20s. So that's certainly a valid question. But for me, I really, really want to go pro casting. That has been my thing for the last year and a half, and I think I want to stick with it. Now, the journey is so unclear. It's such a brand new industry that it's tough to choose a path to get there. So that's why I've sort of branched out into multiple different things to at least guarantee that I get in to the industry after college. So that's kind of my broader idea. But in 10 years, I hope I hit the milestones necessary. Like I've never casted a LAN yet. I want to do that someday, and I just want to keep casting better competition. And honestly, I don't really have a preference for which esport it is either, or where it might be. I don't think I have a fear of moving abroad to do so either. I don't feel as if I have to stay within Canada. So I think I think there's a great potential, but my end goal has to be professional casting.
No, absolutely. And you know what? You and I work together. Often we got that podcast together. I just think, and I'm sure Night Flash Mins, you can chime in on this. It'd be so much fun it's one thing to cast, and we'll talk about this a bit later as well, but it's one thing to cast online. It's a completely different thing to be there in person. But just imagining sort of a LAN event where you're hosting, you can walk around, you can get involved, you can feel that sort of energy. It's like Pandora's box. And I feel like that would absolutely be something so enjoyable.
Yeah, I think the energy aspect is really like what kicks it up, But I completely agree. It would be a pretty sweet thing to cast a LAN.
Yeah, I think I have some fears with casting a LAN because when I'm casting just like in person at the school, or if I'm casting from home, like any sort of distraction makes me stutter. And I'm not the only caster where this happens too. Somebody comes and like knocks on our door on our casting, or for some reason, I immediately shoot my eyes over. So like in an environment where everybody's yelling, everybody's screaming, like how can I stay focused? It's one thing that I'm gonna have to overcome, and it's only really going to come with experience. So I just hope I do get a lot of LAN opportunities so I can get that experience. And I hope I don't. I mean, my biggest fear has to be just screwing up on main stage.
Well, you know what? You're kind of talking a little bit of the production side there of even being at the school. We actually have a couple photos here kind of showing the in production that we have here at Fanshawe. And you know what, Justin? Yeah, like speaking kind of virtually, but now doing more in person, commentating. Like, how has that sort of been for the transition?
Yeah, I mean, from home, honestly, I think I'm more used to casting in person now. But from home, you're all alone, you're isolated, and your mic settings are your responsibility when you're casting from home. They're now Apollo's responsibility. They're your producer's responsibility now that casting in person. So that's something that I don't have to worry about. And this is actually one of the first in-person casts. This photo right here. We had the idea. I had the idea that we should stand up, and then I realized that I can't stand forever. So we made the switch to sitting down eventually. And slowly but surely our production in person got better. We got a backdrop that actually makes our camera scene look a lot better. And I have to say, I've warmed up to casting from the flat screen TV as well. That is a fantastic resource for us to have. Instead of just using like a monitor or whatever, we get this big TV. We can usually see everything just fine. Which is also great to have. And honestly, it is a little jank because it's not a permanent room, but big props to our producers, specifically Apollo. This guy's done a great job with all the prod, and he uses every resource we have to the max to make sure that we have the best production value, and I really appreciate it.
Yeah, Sorry to cut you off there, Mins, but that's exactly what I was going to say there. I just feel like that's what we do a really good job of here, just maximizing the production value with what we have. Like, look at us here. This looks great. Having a good time, you know what I mean? And just we have the opportunity and the ability to, go the extra mile, produce that extra content, deep dive a little bit more and do more. And at the same time, that's just helping us develop our skills, developing our portfolio, what we're capable of, and pushing us to the limit as well.
Yeah, I also I think back to the times before Apollo. Like Mins and I, we used to do the COD, and it was actually from my basement. We used to do Call of Duty streams from my basement, which is I'm currently in my basement, and I called that in-person setup super jank. Our setup was even more jank than that one, and our overlays were crude. At the time, I was very proud of them. I had this gradient, I had this drop down camera for the casters I was super happy with, and now I just kind of make fun of myself. I get the shudders when I think about it, because it just doesn't compare to what we have today.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, not even close to what it is now. But you know what? The one thing I was wanting to touch upon though at Fanshawe, like you don't really have that in-game sound now. Like you're not really inside, like hearing where, like what, like maybe some of like the shots that are being played out. How do you actually feel from like that transition of not hearing that in-game sound?
I think some casters have a worse issue with it, but I actually don't find it too bad. The only time it comes into effect is like when there is a sound cue, but usually casters don't cast off sound cues just because you could be wrong, and maybe it was another sound. But for the only part, I think Valorant's the worst, not being able to hear, because you can't hear how close the spike is from going off, and you just kind of have to judge by the flashing light in the middle of the screen, like the top middle of the screen, just to tell how far that spike is actually along. But otherwise, like, yeah, I don't cast off sound. I cast off what we see. And I just it hasn't really been too much of an issue. There's been once or twice where I misjudged how much the spike actually had left, and to the viewer it's very obvious, like it's beeping like crazy and the guy's not going to be able to defuse, and I'm sitting here like, is he going to get it? No, he's not going to get it.
No, you know what? Like, I know for myself as well, I can't use audio cues, because you know what? I was playing some ranked COD earlier today, and I must have died 10 times from mishearing someone I thought was behind me. He's wrapping around the corner the other way, and I can't rely on them at all.
I think you might have had your headphones on backwards there, CJ. I'm not gonna lie, but yeah, no, I completely agree. Especially from my perspective as well, not having the sound is not a crazy issue for the games I cast, anyways. But I can see that being a big issue in CS:GO or a game like Valorant. I can definitely see that.
Now, I just want to bring up here, we were talking about the split. Reider, for you, what's the big difference and just the experience in the final product you find from virtual streams to in-person streams?
Well, in-person streams is a lot easier to set up, a lot more coordinated. Playing off my co-caster is so much easier when we're in person, because I can just look at him, and through body language or tone of voice, I can figure out when he's going to throw, or when is it good for me to throw to him, or what he's talking about, if I agree, whatnot. And sometimes it's just like hand cues, like I'm going to throw to you, and you're going to get a turn to talk, making that transition much more seamless. And the other thing, like with in-person streams, more than anything, there's a lot of benefits, but more than anything, it just limits the amount of technical issues that you're going to have. Because I remember when we were doing in person, sometimes certain scenes wouldn't have audio, some scenes did have audio, and it's just something that we didn't catch. Or sometimes, a caster's internet would go out. We don't have that issue when we're in person. So limiting those kind of issues increases our production value. And then, of course, the caster scene, which is just one camera, both casters talking with each other, talking to the viewer in person, it just looks so much more professional, and I'm very happy with how it's been so far.
No, for sure, for sure. And you know what? I just feel like it allows, especially in person, it just feels like the product's just started. I feel like coming into January this year, it's like that first time we've gotten our foot on the start line where it's like, we keep using the word jank, but the setup is like we get a really nice polished product out there consistently. You know what I mean? And it's not like we're doing one stream a week, two streams a week. We are pumping out a good amount of streams for a good amount of games consistently. Now, if I'm going to sit there and play devil's advocate, the one thing I will say is establishing the skill set and the ability and having that, call it a COVID after effect with all this online everything. But, you've experienced it. A snowstorm's going down. The car broke down. Extenuating circumstances lead you to not be able to get to work or for a stream to happen in person. And all of a sudden it's like, well, we can still problem solve it. So although I completely agree with you top down, you know what I mean, how great it is to stream in person, it's also fantastic to have the ability, the tool when needed to do those virtual streams.
Oh, absolutely. Like, not gonna discredit the virtual streams whatsoever. They're still great. We used overlays that we had even before we switched broadcast softwares, and honestly, they're just as quality. And they were also, of course, made by Apollo. So to have that resource is invaluable, especially because I mean, personally, I live in Byron, and it's like a 30-minute drive to the school down in Oxford. And sometimes when it's really snowing heavy, I mean, the plows don't come this far. Are you kidding? The plows in London are horrible. So sometimes I'm forced to do a stream from home, and to be able to have that equal production value at home to in person, it's just fantastic to have.
Yeah. Now I want to toss a sort of a question in Mins's direction here. Now, Mins, you got your first virtual Rocket League stream in there the other day, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it was your first virtual stream as a producer as well, potentially. And Apollo is just the Lord. He is him. He is Himothy of the production world here, but you're definitely Himothy Jr. You know what I mean? What was it like for you as a producer getting that virtual experience compared to in person?
You know what? More for like in person now, it just seems a lot more structured. Kind of coming in, yeah, of course, we sort of have to set up all the PCs. We have to set up, plug everything in, make sure everything's running okay, making sure that, like all the games are updated in person. But it's nice because then you're actually right there with the casters too. You can kind of tell them like this is what's going on. You can kind of hear more of their intel, and it's a lot more of a collaboration thing, especially when it's different though. When you're virtual, you're having to do so much more work like yourself for production, making sure all the graphics are looking right, making sure you have all the numbers in order, especially when it comes to like Call of Duty. I know that was sort of the main one I was running virtually. I sometimes was like an hour or even two, sometimes 2.5 hours if it was both teams playing a night, and I had to do all of the graphic work. I had to make sure that all of like the KDs were correct, just everything was in order then. And it kind of sucks, but at the same time it was fun though, having to get that whole experience of what I actually had to do to have a whole stream together for esports.
No, for sure. Night Flash, you got a preference? Are you a secret virtual lover, or are you big on the in person as well?
I'm kind of indifferent. I think they both definitely have their benefits. Reader touched on the fact that you can really play off your co-caster really well. I mean, one of my first in-person productions, me and Reader had a 5-minute conversation about noodles. And like, I don't think if we weren't in person, I'm not sure if that would have happened. But I think they definitely both have their benefits. For me, I just like Justin, don't live too close to the school. I'm about 15 minutes away, so it's not the worst drive, but it's definitely not it's not favorable. But also, like, I enjoy the comfort of my own home. I have a whole room for my things, so I enjoy this room. But I do enjoy coming to the school, and it's nice to like past the production part of it and past the it's nice to actually get to see the people that you're working with, not just sort of see them on a camera or hear their voice. Especially for some of our producers, it's nice to like you know just sort of be able to socialize and have that sort of social element of it, where when it's virtual, it's like completely like, all right, you show up 30 minutes before, like, shoot the shit for a bit, and then it's like strictly business, and then you're out of where in person you kind of get to hang around, help out, set up or tear down, whatever. And yeah, it's always a good time. So I'm
Yeah.
as long as I'm casting, I'm having a good time. Essentially, is what I'm saying.
Yeah. And you know what? Kind of what I was wanting to bring up as well, like, especially, yes, us for studio, we're in person, but the players are in person too now. Like, CJ, kind of how does that actually feel, the interaction of seeing the players like in person too and interacting with them even like before games?
Okay, just as a caster, and I'm going to sort of toss this question some further down the line to Justin a bit after, but as a caster, it's sort of completely different. You know what I mean? Because I can show up to work and I can go into the room and I can be like, hey guys, like, what's the game plan today? What are we expecting? How are you feeling? And it just allows us to develop this completely different portfolio of knowledge to bring to the cast on a day-to-day basis. Because when we're virtual, you know what I mean? We might know the recent record. We might know they've been doing well or doing poorly, but that's kind of where it starts and where it finishes. Whereas when we're in person, it's been like, oh yeah, we just had a great scrim against Queens and we're feeling good. And these guys, like, we've played well against them lately. And it just, the map picks in Call of Duty, for example, whereas that goes from being strictly me and Reider's opinion on maybe that's how I or he feels about the map in our breakdown. Whereas if we go to Team Captain Bonk, like, hey, what do you think about this map breakdown? Like, what do you see? What are you looking for? Who picked what? It just adds like such an extra level to this. Now, Justin, I know like you were the one that actually got me. Sorry, going into the room consistently, talking to the guys, getting involved. For you, like, how different is it for you getting to see the guys? I feel like it boosts your energy a little bit. Like, what do you love about that?
Well, the first thing is that it gives me so much to talk about on stream. I'm never grasping for things to say in the pregame show because I always have, if we're talking about the Call of Duty team, Bonk has told me, oh yeah, like this is going to be a roll. We're really, really confident. And then I say something about it on stream. I mean, Bonk seems confident, whatnot. Or maybe Bonk comes in one day and he says, I'm tired. I don't know. You can mention that. And like you said, it's just it's great to be able to see the guys in there. Like, we had a couple content pieces, like short content pieces that they actually recorded themselves in the room, which we then displayed on stream. That was a fantastic Call of Duty stream, and I'm hoping to save that one because it was a good cast. It was some good moments with the team, and they were able to get the win off. So.
No,
I think for the players it means a lot, but for us it means just as much to be in that room.
No, I loved everything you brought up there as well. The one thing for me is I feel like just, Fuel in general, it started a while back. I'm newer to Fuel than some of you in this, like Mins and Reider. You guys are really OGs when it comes to the behind the scenes stuff. But it just sort of seems like Fuel's really taking that step community-wise. You know what I mean? You really get that community feel. You get people watching each other's games, talking in the Discord. Us working in person, we get to talk a lot more as well. And it just, as a whole, as a unison, it's really sort of tied Fuel together a little bit more.
I mean, the fuel station has really helped out with that. The new esports room new. It's about a semester old now, but people are in there all the time. The room is very frequently full, and now that you can meet people in person playing video games is a game changer. Before you had to meet them on Discord through a general message saying, hey, who wants to play Apex, or hey, who wants to play Rainbow Six? And that's actually how the teams were created initially. Now all you have to do is you got to go in the room, and if the guy sitting beside you is playing the same game you are, you guys can queue up. Boom, you've made a new friend. And then that happens on a daily basis now thanks to the new room. So it's been great, not only for the teams but for the community, that room. And of course the community is just booming thanks to not only that room but the work that we do to kind of get esports events going and bring people together.
Yeah, you know what? And then the other thing I liked about your previous comment, the content within streams, you know what I mean? As the COD team made those little videos, we got those uploaded directly into the stream right then and there. That's another thing I hope to see us doing. And that's sort of my sort of darling takeaway from this segment here, production behind the scenes, is being in person allows us to develop segments, clips, and just this added level altogether. You know what I mean? Where between games, we can show a little more, do a little more, talk a little more. And just like we did with the COD team, getting that content on hand, it allows us to just maximize our product and maximize our skills as well. And it's just so enjoyable.
Yeah, CJ, I know you benefit from the in-person casts because you go in there and the first thing you're doing is we got a whiteboard in that room and you are jotting down every single stat that you can fit in that board. So I know that you love it.
No, honest to goodness, I absolutely do. And it, for me, it makes a world of difference because on a remote cast, you can absolutely have some notes up on your computer, but there's just something so different to me about getting, maybe it's teacher mode, professor mode, call it what you will, but there's just something about writing something on a whiteboard that keeps it fresh in my mind for some reason. Couldn't tell you what it is, but I love it. Well, on that note there, I have a feeling it's that time of the night here. The moment I know I have certainly been waiting for. I feel like it's time for us to start heading towards top 10 action. Now, before we start diving directly into clips, we've sort of alluded to it. We've teased it. We're going to have some new inclusions in our clips this week, and we're going to have some notable exclusions. So when we come out of top 10s, we're going to talk about no Call of Duty. I'm not going to bury the lead on this one. There's no Call of Duty in our top 10 clips, and that's definitely the first topic we're going to hit coming out of the segment. But on that note, let's get into CJ's top 10 clips with some honorable mentions here. And it's going to be Overwatch making their debut in the top 10. And our first clip of the week, it's Lights and Reels showing us that healers can lay damage as well with some fundamental Mercy play at hand here. Now, I'm not an Overwatch player myself, but it looked like it was a busy clip right here, and he got it done starting off our honorable mentions. And we said mentions, so after this clip here, we're going to have one more clip for you. It's some Rocket League action. It's a smooth pass and a leopard dunk up front, close and personal here. And what a clip by Leopard. I'm sure we're going to have some more Rocket League in our future in this top 10 as well. But for an honorable mention, that's a pretty good indicator. We're going to have some more good clips coming your way. Top 10 official. Let's get some Valorant action underway. Keep an eye on this. We are going to have to slow this one down for everyone here. My goodness. A flick, and it's Sworns finding the quick kill. You thought we were done with Rocket League? Absolutely not. At number 9, it's Van Rye to space, little double tap, and a nice finish off the roof. That's an alley-oop dunk if ever I've seen one. And you know what? I feel like we're going to have a nice early Rocket League roll to start our top 10 here. As a great, we got another Rocket League clip coming at you. This time, it's a musty flick pass. It was a smooth flick pass to set up the goal, and Rocket League is making their presence known in the top 10 here so far. My goodness, that's smooth from space, and that's a clean finish from Leopard. You got to love that. And we got more coming at you here with our 7th clip. And you know what? It's going to be Team Toon Captain, Rusty G, showing his mechanics off. We're going to bring that back from another perspective for you because he's going to go airborne. He's going to make the touch. He's coming off the room. Double touch in the air to himself, little aerial goal. That is pretty from the Rocket League T2 Captain, Rusty G. Coming in at our next clip, number 6. More Rocket League, you say? It's Van Rye getting in on the action and showing that elite control. My goodness, you see so many high miles per hour shots in Rocket League, but Van Rye keeping it calm, taking it the length of the pitch, and a whoopsie doodle right over the top, and he finds a bar down. That's a beautiful goal. You know what? We talked about the super sub in our hot streaks. Well, we're going to talk about him some more. It's Kenny coming in, and it's a clutch situation. It's a 2-on-1, and this is for the series. Game on the line, And that is a huge play, celebration at hand. And I can assure you we're going to see some more of him later. Let's get back to some Valorant action. You're going to have to keep it on the kill feed here, as we didn't catch everything. It comes at you quick. But that's a 4-kill coming at you here. We had to do a little cut, so you're going to see the death from the player's perspective there. As we move into our third clip, it's a Kimbo, surrounded. They're going to make something out of nothing here. A player's going to appear right in front of their face, and they're going to find 3 when it look like they are going to fall instantaneously. Our second clip, it's the super sub, and he is absolutely not done. R6 is in the hot streaks for a reason, and it's yet another double piece for Kenny, a key one at that. And my goodness, the super sub 2 clips in the top 10 this week showing he belongs. But you want to know what would hold the number 1 spot in top sellies? Might just be that right there. But it's not the top spot on this week's top 10. Coming in at number 10, it's Valorant. It's Sworns. And this is an absolutely crucial, not 1, not 2, but it's going to be 3 kills. Whole team sitting there waiting for him. And finding those kills absolutely set up and allowed his team to roll through and find the victory there. Now, we just had a slew of great clips. You know what I mean? We've all done some Rocket League, and Rocket League really making their presence known in the bottom 5, but it's Valorant taking the top spot, sprinkled in from start to finish as well. Overwatch making their first appearance, and the honorable mentions. But before we get into some COD talk in the top 10 or their top 10 emissions, you know what? We talked about them a lot in the hot streaks. Kenny, 2 clips in the top 10, and he had a clip last week as well. As a substitute, you know, at this point, personally, you got to assume he's hungry for a full-time position at some point.
Yeah, I've talked to Kenny about this a lot. He was in discussion for that T1 spot, and the team just sort of felt that they didn't have the synergy with him or whatever. But, you know, he's performed so well, so I'd be shocked if he wasn't, if it wasn't a talk currently going on in the team about Kenny taking that full-time role. But I'd love to see it happen. I'm just not sure if we'll get to see it.
No, absolutely. And you know what? We've seen him. The team's playing well in hot streaks. He's making it look good while he does it as he's here, and we're talking about him in top 10 action as well. But you're going to hop in and say something there, Mins?
Yeah, just you're mentioning about that synergy. I don't know, the celebration he had after that one play. I think he's got all the synergy with that team.
Yeah, and you know what? In all esports, what might initially seem like a rough fit, once you, and I love to use this sort of saying where you got to know the brothers in arms you're going to battle with. You know what I mean? And you just starting to learn the personality, the quirks, and settling in. Maybe they didn't vibe at first, but once you get to know, you never know a person truly, you know what I mean? Not that first interaction. You're in tryouts, you're stressed, you're trying to make a good impression. But now that, you know, you're coming in at a sub, nobody else on T1 had anything to prove at that point. It's just him, and he came in. He's proved that point. The stats have showed it. He's played super well, so it is super intriguing to me to see if he sort of maintains on T1. Maybe they rotate players in. We saw, I'm not sure if it was you and I, Alex, or you and I, Reider, but we've seen teams rotate players at times, so anything's possible here. Maybe go with the hot hand, kind of a hockey goalie theory there. But before we exit top 10s, I feel like we need to talk about no COD clips this week. That is not something I expected to see happen often. And guys, COD not having a great week overall.
No, I
Well,
think
you know what? I think that they just seem so defeated after the loss that they had this week. They only played 1 game on stream. I believe they had 3 games on the Wednesday, and I'm not too certain with how they performed on Wednesday, but the first game was just kind of ugly. They didn't really do much for themselves. They lost the hard point really, really tight, which was the first map. But the map 2 and 3, they had no objective score to show for. 0-6 in the search and strike, 0-6 in the control. It just wasn't their night at all. And I think a lot of it was just due to their confidence level after map 1. They went in thinking that they were going to win, so defeated when they lost, when it was so close, and they never regained.
Yeah, no, it was a rough showing out of the boys this week, definitely. But I do think there are some positives to kind of take away from it. You know, they lost the map. Like they completely lost full. No composure was left. It wasn't the Fuel team that we're used to seeing. If that makes any sense. But from what I know, Wednesday went fairly well. So if that is the case, a really good takeaway is they got hork slammed on Monday. Like, to be completely and brutally honest, they got 3-0'd, 6 zip in an S&D, 3-0 in a control. The only like real chance they had seemingly was the hard point, and I'm not going to pin it on any certain player, but Bonk takes that and he like owns that loss. He says it's the worst map he's ever had in CCL history. But for that whole map, he didn't have comms. His Discord was bugging out or something. So to be able to get smoked on Monday and then a 2-day turnaround to then having a positive day, that's shows great ability to sort of regain and get that composure back. So I think that's one positive takeaway from COD this week.
No, you know what? You're not wrong at all. And I feel like, I guess this team has had to endure a lot synergy wise. You know what I mean? You have that rotating fourth member, and then they absolutely had to scrap to qualify for Division 2. It wasn't no cakewalk. They absolutely had to tooth and nail fight. And then once they get in, they found those early wins against the easy teams, but they had some tough games mixed in. And at that point, for me, it's just a question of resilience. And that, for me, is going to be the story for this team the rest of the season. Because when those guys are feeling confident and they're feeling good, they're all going to go on burners. I know, like, if Cure's feeling hot, he's going to gun you out. If Boss Frost is feeling good and he's bugging Kier, telling him he's top fragger and they're having a good time, he's going to go on a burner. We know what Bonk's capable of, and we know what Fiend's going to provide, you know what I mean? But it's just, like you said, Night Flash, how they're going to bounce back from these losses. Because you know what? This team is capable of competing night in and night out, and that's a frustrating thing, you know what I mean? I see them go fight tooth and nail sometimes against some of the better teams around, and then it's looking questionable against worse teams, quite frankly, you know what I mean? So we all watch so much Call of Duty. We're all a part of the Call of Duty streams and have been. And it's just the consistency. We need the resiliency and the consistency.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Yeah, they're kind of almost playing a little bit of like a Toronto Maple Leaf style. But, I mean, you know what, though? The RAT, they were sitting like at the bottom of the standings. And I think maybe they just came in a little too confident, thinking like, oh, this is a walk in the park. And sometimes that can shoot yourself in the foot there.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Like, is it N-Tip they're called, Reider, that they took that tough loss to?
It's NJIT. NJIT.
Yeah, NJIT.
New Jersey Institution of Technology. Yeah, I was there for that game. That was a wild one. There were some words said that should not be said. I'll say that, but no, but that's a perfect example. They had that NJIT game. And then right after, they had another match against a arguably a better team, and they lose to NJIT 3-1, I think. And then they win a map 5 against whoever they were playing afterwards. McMaster, I think it was. So it's just it's interesting to see how fast this team can regain and sort of shrug a poor performance off, and then just sort of go and get hot seemingly out of nowhere. So I think it's overall like for the week negative, but overall for the future positive.
Yeah, I accept that take out of Night Flash. And for me, it's just those NJIT games, they absolutely hurt. You know what? I know those guys, and I'm sure they will be back with more clips in our top 10 next week, or at least we can hope. But some other clips I'd like to see in our top 10 someday soon is Apex. We got some Apex tournaments here at Fanshawe. And speaking of, we got Apex teams and we got Apex tournaments. So let's talk about the first ever Fuel Apex tournament we did just the other day. Me, Night Flash, and Reider were all a part of that stream. Sorry, Mins, to give you that little bit of FOMO over there, but it was such a fun time. I've never had the opportunity to experience something quite like that before, because just from a caster's perspective, I'm so used to that sort of general POV swapping between, but it was Reider doing the observing, doing a little bit of a swap, going to an observing role. And Reider, talk about what it was like to try and keep up with the action, because it went from nothing to everything. I don't know how you kept up.
Well, it wasn't my first rodeo observing Apex actually, and I've casted that esport as well, believe it or not. But I was really really glad to see you two, CJ and Melon, do that cast. I mean, you guys sounded fantastic. I've been telling everybody how well you guys sounded, and people got to go watch back that stream. But for the observing, it's so interesting. The game just released its spectator mode. Like that's brand new. It didn't have a spectator mode like 4 weeks ago. It existed, but it wasn't public. And you have to. I got my hands on this PDF file that basically laid out all the spectator controls, because you couldn't just go find them in the settings. You actually, if I hadn't have had this guide, I would have had no way to figure out what button does what, and then how do I get to the next player. But essentially, you can choose POVs from the map, and you really really want to use the map a lot in this game. It does take up the whole screen, but we didn't have full lobbies, so the players were a lot spread out sometimes, and I just kind of had to like guess where the next gunfight was gonna happen. Sometimes I would be joining a gunfight late because we had just finished one, and I had to swap really fast, and then once I get to the teams that are fighting, I have to, what's the best way to switch to the right POV? It's almost impossible to find that. So it was really, really hectic. And out of the esports that I observe, I think that one's got to be one of the tougher ones. It's a completely separate style of game than anything else, because it's a battle royale. So it is certainly a lot of fun. Watching Apex games are a lot of fun, and how that scoring works and stuff. And of course, like Apex fights are some of the most intense fights in esports. So it was a great experience. I would certainly do it again. I hope we actually host another tournament soon.
No, absolutely. And you know what? Correction, because I saw your reaction there, Night Flash. It was actually me and Melon. So the two guys above us here were the ones that unfortunately missed out on that Apex action. But you know what? The tournament's so much fun. We hope to do it again. Now, the one thing, so we had 11 teams in action. And the one thing I found really interesting is between those 11 teams, I believe it was roughly 12, 13 Fuel players total. You know what I mean? So we had a ton of non-Fuel members participating in this tournament. And it's interesting to see. Maybe it's the room encouraging that. Maybe it's the streams encouraging that. But now all of a sudden you have non-players starting to get involved in Fuel stuff.
Yeah, that's great to see. We briefly touched on how the Fuel station and really us as like the Fuel as a whole group have really been working on our community outreach and our community growth, and the Fuel station does such wonders for that. I think our broadcasts also do wonders for that. But like hosting tournaments is a really good way to grow your community. There might be some people who are like, oh well, I'm not like I'm not into any of the competitive esports they play, so I'm not really down with the Fuel. But if we start hosting tournaments in Call of Duty, Apex Legends, Warzone, when custom games come out, which who knows when that's going to be, but there's so many free games out there. I realize I said Call of Duty; it's not a free game, but there's free games out there that you can host tournaments in. That, like, realistically, if you're just starting out becoming a competitive player, or if you've been a competitive player for 5-10 years, but we just don't like do anything in the game that you've like to compete in, there's like, it's such a good way to grow your community. I think that's what the Apex tournament did. As you stated, there was 12 players. That's 4 teams. So uh there were 7 teams full of people who aren't part of Fuel. That's awesome.
Yeah, and you know what? If we get these games sort of broadcasted out a little more, really push the envelope with how many people know about them, it'll give us the opportunity to expand on it more. But Rita, you can attest to this. Like people were chomping at the bit, a couple of games in, and we're all sitting there like, oh, I'm tired. And they're like, another game? Another game? Do we extend this tournament some more? So you could definitely feel the passion, the energy. It was good because some people were remote. Some people were in the room. So it was a really interesting vibe to get. Now, one thing I want to talk about is how we scored the tournament. So we use the Telus format. Now, we have 3 Apex teams at Fanshawe, and I believe our one team competes in Advanced, I believe it's called, and then we have 2 in Open Plus. So we have teams that we offer, you know what I mean, but we can't stream them, which is really frustrating for whatever reason. But yes, thank you. The match scoring system from Telus. I wanted to talk a bit about the upset potential this provides. So we did a best of 5 structure, well, first to 3. And with your placement, you could rat around and come out with 12 points. But if you went on a kill burner, it was 1 point per elimination. And ultimately, we'll touch on this a bit later when we see the standings. Like 16th to 20th, it's irrelevant. You're not getting 0 points. We also didn't have that many teams, but you could be so far ahead in first place via placements or eliminations, and then having a rough third game could absolutely trounce you in the standings. And it's just, we don't have an esport realistically that we could consistently see that level of a lead blown with ease.
Yeah, I completely agree. But that's one of the things with battle royales. Is you can go on a kill burner, like you can, we'll touch on Warzone, right? You can go 17, 20 kills even, and then you get killed from some rats crouching in a dark corner with the rose skin, So there has to be some sort of balance there, if that makes any sense. There has to be because in any esport there is rewards for playing slower and or playing fast. Where with like basic battle royales, you usually get rewarded for playing slow, but to make it for sort of that like competitive integrity and for it to make sense, if you're a better player and you just sort of like get third party or whatever, or somebody they trap you outside of the zone, whatever it may be, right? But you dropped 12 kills, whatever. You deserve to be rewarded for making that action happen. You know what I mean?
No, absolutely. Absolutely. And you know what? Let's take a quick look at the standings. And Reader, I'm going to toss this to you because you were there with me as well. It's the School of Aviation coming out on top. Now, I'll talk about this quickly first. It's significant because there was no Fanshawe Fuel players on that team. It was a team of guys from, well, we can only assume the School of Aviation. And one player in particular, Keed, was absolutely nasty, a completely filthy player. And they were not in a position to come in first place all the way until the start of game 3. We saw Rusty G and the Henchmen looking like they've run away with things. Reader, you were observing a front row of seats. Henchmen went down early. Like, did you think it was going to be the School of Aviation pulling things out, or what is it? Did you have a feeling it might have been one of the other teams in the top 5 with maybe more fuel representation?
Well, I think at the time I don't necessarily have like photographic memory, like it's not bad, but I wasn't actually sure like who was behind the henchmen. I thought the henchmen pretty much had it in the bag. All they realistically had to do was like place okay, grab a couple kills, and they would come out on top, no problem. But like you said, like when they went down, we kind of went scrambling for the stats, like who's next in line, who can realistically take this away from them. And at the end of the day, I don't think I expected it to be the School of Aviation. I know that we had spectated them before, and the casters had been talking about them. They had done well in previous maps, but it's definitely, I mean, we've been talking about the henchmen since map 1 because they were the team doing the best. We were spectating them, and every time we went to spectate them, it was always, this is the number 1 team. These guys are the guys ripping up the map. But for them to come in and steal that win, it was definitely a hype moment. And I mean, for guys that aren't necessarily a part of Fuel, I'm sure that they were very proud to come in and beat all these esports players.
No, absolutely. And you know what? You know what? Maybe they might hop on to an Apex team next semester, get involved themselves. But the big takeaway I had from just watching that entire experience go down, and you can hear it talked about in so many esports, when you're at just the lowest level of rank play, the lesson of playing your life, just playing your life, staying alive. The henchmen were in a position, all they had to do was stay alive. That's all they had to do. But they played really aggressive off the drop in game 3, and they found themselves falling early. And if that didn't happen, it never would have put the School of Aviation in a position to find success. Conversely, School of Aviation, they had a lot of kills in the first 2 games. Game 3, they really slowed down, which makes me believe they had a pretty good idea that they had a shot of pulling off the upset. And they were one of the last 5 teams alive, but they still barely squeaked by less than 10 points. So I know me personally, I definitely hope we can get some more Apex streams going at some point, because with whatever game you can play where you can have an upset down to the absolute last second, there's nothing more fun to watch. And my goodness, Melon, it was comedic. It was a fun time. Like, it just allows a more conversational, yet you get that juicy, intense play-by-play actions in there as well.
Oh yeah, and you know what? Even like just thinking more onto Apex though, the drop in sometimes, like, kind of want to go dig more into like the casting side, but like I think that's the most unique side for Apex is those drop ins, because you can make an aggressive play, exactly what you were just talking about there, CJ, and go in and just try and make those eliminations. But you can be screwed from that if all of a sudden you make that quick drop in and you only have Mozambique. Like, where are you going with it, right?
Hey, now
But
don't hate on the Mosaic.
but I mean, at the same time though, CJ, like, how is it actually casting it?
Man, it was super, like, honestly, casting it, like, I can't compliment Melon enough for that stream. I could tell he was just so excited to get into it. It was just natural. It was just so much fun, because I was chatting with Melon, and then, oh my goodness, some action's going down. And you just dive into it. He's calling the play. I'm breaking it down. And then it's like, 2 minutes of nothing. Let's chit chat. What you see, what rotation you expect. How's the weather? You know what I mean? Like, for me, it was just like that perfect balance. Like, for 2 minutes, I feel like I'm casting a baseball game. And then for 2 minutes, it's OT of a hockey game, and just having that absolute difference going back and forth. But what I agree with Reider, how he said for observing, super difficult to do the play-by-play and color portions, because, for example, observing, there's only so many colors in the rainbow. You can only get so many colors on the maps for teams. And as a caster, looking at that screen when you have crimson, red, and lighter red hanging out in one POI together, it's so difficult to distinguish who's going where, who's fighting who. And when you have, say, a POI, Storm 3, Storm 4, and you have 5 teams in a confined area, it's like, who do I look at? Who do I cast? Who do I highlight? Who's going to shoot first? And it's just when teams start making those aggressive, dynamic plays, utilizing their movement champions, my goodness, I know it's hard for the players they're going against to keep up, and it's definitely challenging for me as well.
You know what? I did like tune in and I was watching some moments, and like when it was like a little bit of a quiet moment, I honestly felt like if I closed my eyes, it almost would have been a bit of like a golf commentation that I was watching. Like, where was it going? Is it gonna hit a par? But it was really cool to watch though.
All I know is I hope to see some more Apex caustic treatment in trench warfare another day on stream, and some more tournaments. Now, Call of Duty, I've kind of spoken about this with our producer in the background, the man, the myth, the legend, Apollo. We've all been involved in COD cast, and it's a little different to sort of envision it versus a BR. But just for me, I think it'd be absolutely amazing to find a way to get a COD tournament going at some point. I just think it'd be crazy great.
Yeah, I completely agree. I've been talking about doing a COD tournament for a while. But you know, maybe my voice wasn't being heard, or but whatever. But I'm glad that you brought it up. I think a COD tournament would be awesome. Whether it's whatever, however we may do it, whether it's in person, online, at 2v2, 4v4, 3v3, however we decide to break it down. I think it would be awesome. It also it would give, I think, as I said before, it's a great way to build up your community. So I think a COD tournament would really be a great fit.
I
Just
think
for
because
me,
ranked plays out that it would be more realistic now to have a COD tournament than before. I think there's a lot more players playing the competitive rules, but that's the biggest issue with Call of Duty, right? There's a lot of people who play Call of Duty, millions of people that play Call of Duty, but only a fraction of them play ranked play consistently and are familiar with the competitive scene. So I think that at Fanshawe that we could get a good COD tournament going, although it might not be huge. I think personally, to help build community, we need to think more outside the box than Call of Duty. And the student union already does this, but we need to make it the Fanshawe Fuel chess tournament, and it needs to be streamed. I would love to do a stream like that, and I'm putting it out there publicly because I've been talking about it for a while. But if we could get those tournaments on stream, that would be just a hell of a time.
the second you started going there, I knew exactly where you were going with it. I knew chess was being brought up. I could sense it, but you know what? I would just love to cast a chess game. It's like, and Reider, he's got the pawn, and well, what's he gonna do with it? Up in the air, right here and right. It could be interesting, but it's like chess, really, of all games. Like, you know what? I swear we did a TFT stream or something. It's
the
a wave.
Chess wave is growing. It's huge. Everybody's playing chess like now because it's just a million reasons. But like chess.com, I'm sure you're familiar. Like the main chess website, it's like overflowing with new accounts, and their servers can't even keep up. Like chess is blowing up right now. We need to take advantage of that.
Hey, I do love some chess myself, so no hate, but it is definitely a random thing to be getting hot. Night Flash, Mins, what do you two think about the idea of a sort of chess tourney?
I'm sold.
Mins was talking about an Apex tournament sounding a bit like golf commentary. Let's be honest, golf is more entertaining than chess. So, like,
now chess boxing, maybe. What if we did chess boxing?
I mean, you know what? I will back FPS chess tournament. An FPS chess tournament. I'm on board with that 100%. But no, in all seriousness, I am on board with a chess tournament. I also like. There's 17 people in a zone that's 2 cubic meters. And, somebody's flying up into the sky, somebody's dropping a bubble shoot. Like, how am I supposed to? So I think it's fine that it's an esport. I just never think that I don't think that it can ever be like a serious esport purely just based off the RNG of it.
Yeah. And the one thing I was wanting to like bring up about it was the skill, because you were saying that as well there, Night Flash. It does go down a lot from that skill level, because if you think about, best example is Call of Duty. You have your kind of your standard guns you're going to run with, the standard attachments you're going to run with, and typically then you're just going to grind out that game as much as you can to improve on the map layout, how you can actually go into weird awkward angles, and it can help improve on winning games. But for Apex, like, it's a random like kind of roll the dice wherever you're gonna go, and like it just takes such a different type of skill to go out there, and like all of a sudden if you're gonna land a spot and get terrible sort of like guns off the start, you might not have the greatest armor off the start, how you have to learn on how to deal with that, how to figure out like, if I don't all of a sudden just have like my gold armor here and my triple take, like what are you gonna do now? And yeah, I think it's still gonna grow and show a good spot that like these players are really skillful to show.
I think this is gonna fall into one of Reider's hot takes here, but I had to say I think it's a little bit ridiculous. I don't think we should categorize battle royales any differently because of the RNG. Because if I'm looking at like sports, like actual sports as a counterpart, I think hockey might have more RNG than battle royales. Okay, this game is the most unpredictable professional sport, and it's still skill that defines who wins the majority of the time. right? And I think that's the same in battle royales. Esports also, like regular esports like Valorant, that aren't battle royales, they have RNG. I mean, Valorant has the recoil, and the where your bullets go after a set amount of shots are fired. That's RNG, and you see some pretty disgusting shots that are just pure luck and can win you entire rounds, right? So in every sort of competition, except for maybe chess, there is that element of RNG, whether it's actual like computerized RNG or whether it's just the way a puck or a ball bounces. There is sort of, those bounces are going to go one way or the other, but still at the end of the day, it's skill that's going to determine the winner.
No, for sure. You know what? It's a bit of a polarizing topic, so I just knew I had to toss it around the room, give everybody their say. Me personally, I hate RNG, but it's unavoidable, so I just feel like everything has it. I do agree with Reider in that mindset, so you might as well keep it in the pack. But I also do agree with you, Night Flash. I don't think it'll ever be a top 3 esport, maybe top 5. It might be able to squeak in just because I find its movement is so electric compared to some other FPS shooters we see, where it might be able to sneak in. And Alex, I do agree with you as well. It is definitely up and coming and growing. Before we head to schedules and wrap up today's stream, I want to thank you, Reider, for joining us. Second guest this week on episode 2 of the podcast. Here, before we wrap things up and take a look at the schedule, Reider, I want you to give one word of advice to a young casters out there looking to come up. What would you have wanted to know when you got started? What word of advice do you have for us?
Yeah, this is something that I started doing right away, and I tell people to do this, and I know that they don't. You absolutely have to watch the streams back after you cast. Go and watch, look at yourself in the face, and don't cringe, because you got to watch that whole thing back, and then you can take mental notes like, oh, like I stuttered here, or I maybe I should have worded this way, and then you'll find yourself, improving every stream. But you're not going to improve the next stream if you don't watch back your streams. Watch back everything you cast, and you will get better.
No, I absolutely agree with that. Let's take a quick hit